Before we begin, viewer discretion is strongly advised. What follows is the courtroom testimony from the federal trial of Sean Diddy Combs as reported by various news outlets. All events and statements are for entertainment and educational purposes only. The trial had passed its halfway point, but the sense of pressure in the courtroom hadn't faded. If anything, it had grown heavier. More names were being said out loud. More timelines were starting to overlap. What once looked like a sensational celebrity case had taken on the air of something institutional. The kind of case that doesn't just end in a verdict, it ends in headlines, silence, or both. That afternoon, just after a procedural witness was dismissed and the jury settled back into place, the clerk announced the next name, Mr. Micah Williams, professionally known as Katt Williams. There wasn't much of a stir at first, but in the gallery, a few people stiffened. One juror sat up straighter, as if instinctively anticipating the unexpected. Katt entered the courtroom without hesitation. No entourage, no camera-ready demeanor. He walked with measured, quiet confidence, the kind that came not from rehearsed poise, but from years of watching powerful people pretend to be untouchable. He wore a dark gray suit, no jewelry, no glasses. His expression didn't change as he took the stand. He was sworn in like every other witness before him. Just a voice confirming, "I do." And then, for a few seconds, he didn't speak. He just sat, looking out, not at Diddy, not at the judge, at the room. The prosecutor opened plainly. "Mr. Williams, during your time in the entertainment industry, were you ever invited to private events hosted by Mr. Combs?" Katt nodded once. "Yes." "Did you attend?" "No." "Could you explain why?" He took a breath. "Because I already knew what they were. I didn't need to walk through the door to figure it out. I'd heard enough from people who did." He adjusted the mic. No theatrics, just a man getting ready to speak with clarity. Let's stop calling them parties. These weren't social events. These were environments with rules, contracts, surveillance, and an unspoken understanding that once you stepped in, you were no longer in control. He looked toward the jury now, not accusingly, but directly. Phones were taken at the door. Drivers were told to drop people off and keep their mouths shut. Some people got picked up in unmarked SUVs and didn't know where they were going until they got there. He paused. No plus ones, no unscheduled arrivals. And if you needed to use the bathroom, someone followed you. The courtroom was quiet. Even the people who had heard rumors were hearing them differently now. And for the people who did go in, what they saw, most of them still won't talk about. But I will. Katt sat forward slightly. People passed out in corners. Naked men and women being led around like props. Celebrities you'd recognize in a second. Zoned out. Gone. And people watching, laughing, filming, like it was entertainment. The prosecutor asked nothing. He didn't need to. Teenagers, some barely 18, some maybe not even that, carrying trays of Coke and liquor, asked to do more than just serve. Gasps echoed. A juror put her hand over her mouth. Another looked away. There were rooms with tinted glass. You could see shadows move, but not faces. You could hear sounds you didn't want to connect to anything human. Slapping, groaning, screaming, and laughing that didn't sound like joy. He didn't flinch. And everybody knew. Nobody said it, but they knew. You either played along or you didn't get invited back. And if you didn't play along, you got cut off, or your career got stuck, or footage showed up. Footage you didn't even know existed. The same people who handed you champagne were filming you from behind the mirror. He paused. So I didn't go, not once, because I understood what those rooms were built for. They weren't about music. They were about leverage. Katt let the silence settle. He didn't fill space with performance. He waited, like a man who had more to say than most people were ready to hear. Then he continued. It wasn't just what happened inside those houses. It was what happened after. He looked toward the jury. The people who went to those events and came back didn't come back the same. Some of them got promotions, deals, headlines. Some of them just vanished. He shifted in his seat. You don't have to disappear to be erased. Sometimes they just stop taking your calls, or they start calling you difficult, paranoid, unstable. The prosecutor asked, "Did anyone ever confront you about your choice not to attend?" More than once, usually quiet. Backstage, other times through people sent to check in. I got pulled aside by names you'd recognize. Actors, label reps, handlers, telling me to be careful, that I was messing with energy I didn't understand. He gave a small, joyless laugh. I understood just fine. What I didn't do was play stupid. Were you ever threatened directly? He took a breath. Not the way most people think of threats. Nobody said, "Do this or else." But you'd get calls. You'd find out a project that was greenlit is now on pause. You'd hear your name come up in meetings you weren't invited to. And you believe this was connected to your refusal to participate? Yes. And to Mr. Combs? Katt didn't answer immediately, but when he did, his voice was calm. Everything led back to him. The guest lists, the footage, the follow-up offers, the whispers. He didn't need to press the button himself. The machine was built to do it for him. He leaned forward slightly. People think NDAs are about protecting privacy. But in this business, NDAs are a form of currency. They're not just paperwork, they're weapons. He looked at the gallery now. If you signed one, you were safe, as long as you stayed useful. If you didn't, or if you started asking questions, the same paperwork that protected the powerful got used to shut you up. He adjusted the mic again. You start talking too much, and they'll remind you. They've got footage, they've got stories, and they've got enough money to make sure nobody listens to yours. Katt sat upright now, voice steady, eyes locked. You can call this a trial about Diddy, but it's not. It's about the whole structure he thrived in and helped perfect. He gestured lightly toward the defense table. He didn't invent this, but he figured out how to market it. He turned coercion into a brand, turned humiliation into marketing, and sold it back to us as culture. Mr. Williams, the prosecutor asked, can you speak to how this extended beyond those private gatherings? Absolutely. He leaned in slightly. You think the parties stopped when the music did? They didn't. They just got more exclusive. A-list. Bidders only. He continued. Diddy was throwing events during award weekends, studio runs, and charity galas. And at each one, there were 2 guest lists, the one for the public and the one for the rooms behind the curtain. Katt's voice hardened now. There were people who went into those back rooms and didn't speak publicly for years. Some of them had breakdowns. Others came back with new contracts. Suddenly, they're on streaming platforms, magazine covers, Fashion Week, all within 6 months. He didn't blink. You want to know why? Because when you give them what they want behind the curtain, they give you everything you thought you were chasing in front of it. He let that sit. Diddy figured that out before anybody else. That exploitation wasn't just accepted, it was expected. All you had to do was smile on camera and never talk about what happened after dark. The prosecutor asked, do you believe that silence was incentivized? Katt's tone didn't change. Number it was enforced. How? Careers, leverage, footage. Some people got shut out. Others got set up. If you tried to speak, they'd drown your voice in gossip. Katt's unstable. He's paranoid. He's bitter. He looked around the courtroom now. I didn't get bitter. I got prepared. How far do you believe this influence reached? Farther than most people in this room want to admit. Celebrities? Yes. Executives? Definitely. Politics? He paused. Look at who showed up to those parties. Now look at who never spoke up after the headlines started breaking. There's your answer. Katt adjusted his seat. Then he said it, clear and without hesitation. This didn't start with Cassie. It didn't start with hotel cameras or lawsuits. This started decades ago. You want a real starting point? Start with Tupac Shakur. There was no reaction from Diddy, but the room grew noticeably still. Even the reporters stopped writing. Pac didn't die because of rap beef. That's the story the industry told y'all so they could keep making money off his death. Pac died because he stopped playing the game. He started naming names, started calling out exactly what was happening in those circles. He leaned in. He called out Jimmy Iovine. He called out Interscope. He said Diddy was a puppet, said Snoop wasn't loyal, said Jay was the next face of corporate control in hip-hop. The prosecutor asked, "Are you saying you believe Tupac's murder was connected to industry retaliation?" "I'm not saying I believe it. I'm saying it happened. Do you believe Mr. Combs was involved?" Katt's voice didn't waver. He didn't pull the trigger, but he benefited. His rivals disappeared. His biggest threat? Gone. And nobody asked questions. Who else? Snoop? Jay-Z? People who had a lot to gain. People who got real quiet after it happened. He didn't pause. Jay stepped into the space Pac left behind. Suited, controlled, quiet when it mattered. Snoop turned into the cuddly version of himself. Uncle Snoop? Puff? He kept climbing. The cameras got flashier, the circles got wider, but the behavior stayed the same. What behavior? Control, leverage, secrecy. Puff knew that with Pac gone, nobody else was going to ask the questions that got you killed. The courtroom was dead silent. You think it's a coincidence that Bad Boy took over the radio after Pac died? That Biggie's gone 6 months later? That all the loud voices vanished and the quiet ones became billionaires? He pointed at Diddy now. He didn't just throw parties, he built mechanisms for covering tracks, for rewarding silence, for erasing whoever didn't cooperate. He looked back to the jury. And you want to know what scares them the most? It's not prison. It's somebody still talking. Someone still alive that never signed the NDA. Katt kept his focus on the jury. No notes, no hesitation. You know what I've learned in 30 years in this business? The people you're told to respect the most are usually the ones doing the worst. He pointed gently toward Diddy. This man didn't just build a career. He built a playbook. You want fame? You pay for it. Not with money, with silence, with compliance, with access. He took a breath. That's what it always came down to. You either played your part in the show, or you got replaced by somebody who would. Katt paused, not for effect, just to let the jury catch up. Ask yourself why so many people in this business disappear. Not just from the charts, from their friends, their families, their voice? You think they just got tired? Or do you think maybe they saw something they weren't supposed to? He leaned closer to the mic. You want to know why I stayed out of those rooms? Because I never wanted to be in a position where I had to look the other way, or worse, pretend it didn't happen. His voice lowered. I didn't need to see the footage to know what was behind those mirrored walls. I just had to look at what came after. The courtroom was motionless. The record deals, the brand endorsements, the sudden press turnarounds after someone stopped speaking out. That's not coincidence. That's reward. Katt gestured to the jury now. You've seen the footage. You've heard the rumors. But what I'm saying today, this is not a rumor. This is routine. He looked toward the defense table, not with hatred, but with something colder. Diddy's not an exception. He's the example. The one that got sloppy enough to get caught and powerful enough to think he wouldn't. The prosecutor asked one final question. Mr. Williams, what do you believe this jury should take away from your testimony? Katt didn't blink. that the industry protected this man for decades. That silence doesn't mean it didn't happen. And that every time someone like me, or Cassie, or any of the others, tells the truth, it costs us something. He stood. No theatrics, no big finish. You wanted my testimony. You got it. The rest is your decision. Katt walked out of the courtroom slowly, and the silence he left behind said more than the applause ever could.